could play a set. You know, if your mum had the right tunes, i.e. if I gave my mum, you know, here's 100 tunes, we all like any one of those tracks, my mum could play a set and absolutely shut the gaff out. And that's what it was about. So I know what you're thinking. What the fuck am I doing in a warehouse, covered up fucking with all these hoodies and all these different layers to try and keep warm, when originally, in my book, I said that I would never do this again. But here I am. What a lot of people need to remember is that in 1988, we were just coming out of a major recession and depression. Because, you know, out of recession comes depression. No one's got any work, no one's got any jobs. At that time, all of the clubs, you know, closed at 2 o'clock, they closed at 2:30. You know, it was really a big drink culture. You know, you go out, you get on the lag, you know, you have a fight on the way home. And that was really the normal, that was just normal. And it wasn't just a London thing. You know, just for generally the whole of the country, I would say. You know, we were all in pubs, we were drinking a lot. You know, we were suffering economically through this climate. You know, so we needed a release, you know, because we were getting angrier and we were getting angrier. So really, a lot of people walking around, you know, really angry and really bitter because life had dealt them, you know, a really bad hand. You know, and no one knew where they were going to go. No one knew, you know, what's around the corner, what's going to come next. You know, and what came next was acid house. You know, and acid house, like today, we're in a similar climate today. We're suffering economically. You know, no one's got any work. There's no jobs. You know, today, the funny thing about today is, although we have much more technology and we have much more, you know, things, you know, communication is much better, and generally our lives in a technological sense, you know, has been greatly improved. But the fact is, we have less freedom today than we had back in 1988 and 89 and 1990. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, you would have thought that, you know, having gone on 23 years, that we would have evolved as a culture. And the fact is, we evolved very, very stagmatically. You know, it's almost like we go forward 2 steps, you know, and then something will happen within society that will make us take a couple of steps back. And I think, you know, humanity has been in this constant phase of fight and flight. You take a couple of steps forward, you take a couple of steps back. And I think that with acid house, what it allowed us, what it did for us as a nation of people, okay, one, it introduced drugs. It introduced MDMA. No one had heard of this drug before. You know, we wasn't a pill-taking culture. You know, of my generation of people, you know, we were drinkers. You know, and we smoked a joint. You know, when I was a teenager, you know, there was the whole glue sniffing phase happened, but we missed that. You know, a heroin epidemic happened. You know, we missed that as well. You know, so one of the things that I'm really happy about was that we actually caught on to one of the most happiest, uplifting periods in all of our lives. And I think some of the reasons for it being such a memorable period in British history is that, for once, we allowed ourselves to release our egos. And I think that although people talk about MDMA and they talk about it in a way that it works on your emotions and, you know, it allows you to free your emotions, personally, I think what MDMA is actually doing is it's releasing your ego. You know, and because it's releasing your ego, that is allowing you to feel love. It's allowing you to feel all of these different types of emotions that maybe on a normal day you wouldn't necessarily, you know, emulate, or you wouldn't necessarily feel, because you are so wrapped up in, you know, the rat trap and, you know, jobs and trying to get money and putting food on your table. And it's exactly the same as when we did Acid House. And Acid House came along and it just changed our lives. And it was almost like, up until that point, we'd lived our lives in black and white. You know, and suddenly there was this lick of colour. And with that lick of colour came warmth, you know, came emotion, came, people that for the first time, recluses were able to come out of their shells. People that had never danced in their lives were able to dance for the first time and not give a shit what anybody felt. Because a lot of us were trapped in our own little world, and we were concerned what people thought about us, what people thought about the way we spoke, what people thought about the job we did, what people felt about the clothes that we wear, what people felt about, the way we danced, or, it was all connected to other people. And I think what MDMA did, it allowed us to be individual, while at the same time joining this mass empathy of energy. So although we were part of this great, big, ball of warmth and love and emotional energy, we could actually still be ourselves within that. And that is what allowed us to, free our inhibition. That is what allowed us to be able to just talk to anybody. Because up to that point, again, we were all in our own little world. You only talk to your mates. When we went out, we only spoke to our mates. Apart from women, you didn't go to a bar to buy a few pints, and then while you were there, you started talking to everyone around you, talking to a load of blokes. That isn't a normal thing. We didn't do that.
Right, so let's talk about this party then. Why are you putting this party on?
Why? Why am I putting on another Genesis party? Everyone keeps asking me that, because obviously in my book, I said, would I do it all again? No fucking chance. And the reality is, I never thought I would do it again. And you can imagine over the years, I've had people want to throw hundreds of thousands of pounds at me, to start festivals, or, to do concerts, or, to do another big, massive party for 25,000 people. And over the years, I've never felt the time was right. It didn't feel right within myself, because it, the whole thing was being driven by profit and being driven by money. And I really felt over the years that people wasn't there spiritually to go to that level, because there were so many different drugs around. People were taking, Special K and, cocaine, and they were just really binging out on all these drugs, and that emotion, that awareness, because it's more of an awareness, that awareness of everybody around you, because we went insular again. And that's the same thing which happened in the 70s with the whole LSD and the free love revolution. When people look back at it now, it says, yeah, but it didn't last. But when you're up against a big, powerful machine, mechanism, that is designed to keep you trapped, in your everyday job, with, putting food on your table, it's hard to see beyond that. But consciously, we're coming to, consciously a lot of people believe, whether it's true or not true, whether they're theories or not theories, that we're actually coming to one of the most spiritually uplifting periods in human history. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But what I do know is that everyone I tend to be meeting recently in the last few years, there's this awareness happening, and people are waking up. And recently I saw a banner outside St. Paul's, and it said, beware, people waking up from their comas. And I just thought, that's just so right. We're waking up from our comas. And for the last 23 odd years, we've been asleep again. We fell back to sleep. And right now, we're waking up. And I really wanted, Genesis to be a part of that. I'm not saying that you're going to come to Genesis and you're going to be awakened, or, you're going to come to Genesis and you're going to have this emotional experience that took you back to the 80s. We can't do that. I haven't got a time machine that I can press a few buttons and create that atmosphere. Because originally, it wasn't us that created the atmosphere. We created a playground. Here's the playground, here's your environment, here's the sound, here are all of the people. You now have to create that memorable atmosphere. You now have to create an atmosphere in which you're going to remember for the rest of your life. And that's the same as of today. I haven't got a time machine. So all I ask, everyone that comes to this event, all I can ask of them is, leave your ego out the door. You know, you don't have to take drugs. None of us have to take drugs. We're all, you know, 20 odd years older. You know, we're all that much more experienced. We don't need drugs. And at this particular time in history, you know, we definitely don't need drugs. We needed an accelerator back in the 80s. And that's how I look at MDMA. MDMA was a human accelerator. It helped humanity to accelerate to another level. You know, the whole theory of whether or not, you know, it was a secret government-backed plan that they flooded England with MDMA tablets as a distraction from what was politically happening around the world, you know, that aside, you know, the fact is, in that period of our lives, many of us wasn't even interested in politics. You know, we had no interest in politics. And why did we have no interest in politics? Because we were too busy trying to survive. We were too busy trying to educate our children. We were too busy trying to educate ourselves. We were too busy trying to get ourselves out of the ruts that we were currently in. You know, so humankind was distracted. But, you know, never mind whether it's distracted or not, and whether it was a distraction or not, for the people that experienced it, they were able to drive England and actually drive the pace of the UK for 2 years. So what we can achieve today, given our access to information, given our access to knowledge, because that's all it really is, it's just knowledge. You know, we had hardly any access to knowledge back in the days. You know, you had one library, there was no Amazon, you know, there was no Waterstones, there was no, you know, multiple stores, franchise of bookstores. You know, there was none of that. There was none of the communications that we had today. There was no texting, there was no internet. There was none of that stuff. If you was lucky, if you had a few quid, you'd have a mobile phone. You know, promoters, we had to have the phones, but that's only if you had a few quid. So we were really kind of locked away from information. So when they called it the superhighway, when that happened and that occurred, it really was that. It gave us access to information. So today in 2011, you know, we're endowed with all of this knowledge and this sophistication, because we're far more sophisticated than we've ever been. I think our minds have expanded far more than they've ever been. So now, we don't need drugs. We do not need drugs. We just need to be unplugged. Leave your ego out the door, yeah? To address this event as if it was 1988. You know, let's transport ourselves. You know, we don't need a time machine. Every one of us can do it ourselves. And if we leave our egos at the door, and we engage with everyone that's here, you know, go around, say hello to everyone, fucking share water, do whatever you need to in order for you to be in that space which takes you back, transports you back to 1988. Because I can assure you, everyone else that comes to this building is going to be in that state of mind. We're expecting a lot of heads to come. I mean, all the original party promoters. Back in the days, we used to have a chant, you know, and this particular chant, you know, I've been in a warehouse with 20,000 people doing it, you know, and we're going to get people doing it on the night. And a lot of people remember it, but it goes something like this. You've got to do it in a high-pitched voice, right? And this is it. I see, I see, I see, I see.